I was 66 years old when my daughter-in-law looked me in the eye and asked me to move out of my own master bedroom. Let me introduce myself. My name is Carolyn Delaney. I've been a widow for 7 years. I live in a spacious, 4-bedroom colonial house in a quiet Chicago suburb. My husband and I worked our entire lives to pay off that house. It holds my memories, my peace, and my history. A year ago, my son, David, and his wife, Sarah, asked to move in. Their rent had increased, and they wanted to save for a down payment on their own place. David is my only son. He's a good man, but he has always been entirely too passive, easily swayed by whoever speaks the loudest. And nobody speaks louder than Sarah. I agreed to let them stay. I didn't charge them rent, only asking them to cover their own personal expenses and help with the groceries. I thought I was doing a good thing for my family. Before we go any further, please hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy stories about taking your power back. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. Within a month, the dynamic in my house shifted. Sarah didn't treat me like a mother or a host. She treated me like an inconvenient roommate. She started rearranging my kitchen cabinets without asking, pushing my favorite mugs to the back to make room for her specialized espresso pods. She threw away my vintage floral curtains, replacing them with stark gray blinds because my taste was too outdated. I didn't argue. I didn't cry or throw a fit. I simply observed. I've learned over the years that people reveal who they truly are when they think they have the upper hand. And Sarah clearly believed she was the new lady of the house, but she was about to learn a very hard lesson about assumptions. The disrespect didn't happen all at once. It was a slow, quiet erasure of my presence in my own home. One afternoon, I came back from gardening to find the hallway walls completely bare. The family photos, pictures of my late husband, my younger daughter Lily, who lives in Texas, and David's childhood milestones were all gone. In their place hung abstract, minimalist art pieces Sarah had ordered online. I found David sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. I asked him where my photos went. He barely looked up. Sarah put them in a box in the basement. "Mom," she said, "they were cluttering the space. Just let her have this." "Okay. She's really stressed at work." He didn't defend me. He chose the path of least resistance. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't demand he put them back. Instead, I quietly walked down to the basement, retrieved my precious photos, and packed them into a sturdy trunk. The next morning, while they were at work, I drove to a local storage facility and rented a climate-controlled unit. I began moving my most valuable possessions out of the house, piece by piece. A few weeks later, Sarah's mother, Brenda, entered the picture. Brenda is a retired university administrator, a woman who introduces herself with her academic credentials. She started visiting every Sunday. Brenda and Sarah would sit in my living room, drinking my wine and talking over me. Brenda constantly made passive-aggressive comments about my lack of a college degree. She bragged about Sarah's corporate job and David's potential, treating me like a simple-minded old woman who just happened to be in their way. I smiled, sipping my tea. They thought I was just a tired, dependent widow. They had absolutely no idea who I really was, or what I was quietly preparing to do. Things escalated when Sarah decided my role in the house was no longer just roommate, but live-in help. It started with a pile of dry cleaning left on the kitchen counter with a sticky note. "Carolyn, please drop these off before noon. Thanks." Then came the grocery lists texted to me at 8 a.m. Finally, the true test arrived on a Friday morning. Sarah walked into the kitchen as I was making my oatmeal. "My mom is coming over for dinner tonight with some of her friends," she announced, not looking up from her phone. "Make sure the house is vacuumed. And we'll need that roast chicken recipe of yours ready by 7. She didn't ask. She ordered. I set my spoon down, wiped my mouth with a napkin, and looked at her. "I have plans tonight. Sarah, you'll need to figure out your own dinner." She stopped typing and stared at me, genuinely shocked. "What plans?" "You don't do anything on Fridays. Mom is expecting a home-cooked meal." "Then I suggest you start cooking," I replied, grabbing my purse and walking out the front door. I spent the entire day at a spa, followed by a lovely dinner with an old friend. When I returned home at 10 p.m., the house was a mess, and Sarah was furious. She tried to lecture me about family responsibilities. I didn't engage. The very next day, I called the internet provider. The high-speed Wi-Fi was in my name. I downgraded the plan to a basic level just enough for my iPad, changed the password, and didn't give them the new one. If I was going to be treated like an employee, I was going to start revoking their benefits. The real disrespect, however, was just around the corner. 2 months into their temporary stay, Brenda's apartment building had a plumbing issue. Sarah announced that her mother would be staying with us for a month. I didn't mind having a guest, but Sarah had a specific arrangement in mind. She approached me while I was reading on the patio. "Mom," David started, looking incredibly uncomfortable. He always let Sarah do the heavy lifting when it came to bad news. "Carolyn," Sarah took over smoothly. "Since my mother is older and has bad knees, the stairs are hard for her. We need you to move your things into the basement guest room. Mom will take your master bedroom on the first floor until her apartment is fixed." I looked at David. He stared at his shoes. He was actually going to let his wife kick his widowed mother out of the bedroom she had shared with his father for 30 years. I closed my book. I smiled at Sarah. "No." Sarah blinked. "Excuse me, it's just for a month. You need to be accommodating." "I am accommodating," I stated. "I let you live here rent-free, but I am not leaving my bedroom. Brenda can take the basement, or she can book a hotel." I walked inside, leaving them speechless on the patio. That afternoon, I drove to the hardware store, bought a heavy-duty deadbolt, and installed it on my bedroom door myself. When David came knocking later to complain that I was being unreasonable, I just pointed to the new lock. "My house. My room. David, stop asking." I knew Brenda was going to hate me for this. And I knew she would try to humiliate me publicly to put me in my place. I was counting on it. While they fumed over the bedroom situation, I took a hard look at their finances. They claimed they were saving for a house, but mail was arriving daily: designer clothes, luxury skincare, high-end electronics. They were taking weekend trips and eating out constantly. They weren't saving a dime. They were using my house to fund a lifestyle they couldn't afford. I walked into the kitchen one evening and placed the monthly utility, water, and property tax bills on David's laptop keyboard. "What's this?" David asked, looking confused. "Your living expenses," I replied calmly. "Starting today, I am no longer paying for the water you use, the electricity you waste, or the groceries you eat. You have a week to transfer the utility accounts into your name. If you don't, I'm shutting them off." Sarah scoffed from the living room. "You can't be serious. You have plenty of money." "My money is exactly that. Mine," I said, walking away. The next morning, I made a very important phone call. I contacted a real estate agent I had known for 20 years. The housing market was at an all-time high. And this four-bedroom house was entirely too big for me anyway. I had been thinking about downsizing for a year, but David and Sarah's behavior made the decision incredibly easy. I listed the house privately, off the market, no yard signs, no public open houses, just quiet showings while they were at work. Meanwhile, Sarah was busy planning a massive family gathering at my house. She wanted to show off her perfect life to her extended family. She had no idea her perfect life was about to expire. Sarah sent out digital invitations for a fall family gathering. She invited 50 people, mostly Brenda's friends, Sarah's cousins, and a few of David's colleagues. The invitation implied they were hosting in their beautiful home. She handed me a list of chores a week before the event. I need the patio power washed, and we're doing a buffet. I'll need you to manage the catering trays in the kitchen. I took the list, folded it neatly, and dropped it into the trash can. I will not be cleaning, and I will not be serving your guests. Sarah, I will attend as a guest, or I won't be there at all. She glared at me. Fine. Just stay out of the way. Then, I spent the next few days finalizing my own plans. The real estate agent had found a cash buyer, an older couple looking to move closer to their grandchildren. They loved the house. We signed the paperwork on a Tuesday. The house was fully paid off, and the money went straight into my private account. I also removed David as a beneficiary on my primary checking accounts. I wasn't doing this out of spite. I was doing it because I realized he had chosen his path, and I needed to protect my own future. The day of the party arrived. Caterers rushed around my kitchen. Brenda arrived early, wearing a smug expression and carrying 2 bottles of cheap wine. I stayed in my locked bedroom, getting dressed. I chose a tailored navy suit and my favorite pearl necklace. I was ready. I just needed them to make the first move. If you've ever felt like a stranger in your own home, you know exactly how I felt walking into my living room that evening. 50 people were drinking, laughing, and complimenting Sarah on her exquisite taste in decor. I stood quietly near the fireplace. Brenda noticed me, and her eyes lit up with malicious glee. She tapped her champagne glass with a spoon. "Everyone, if I could have your attention," Brenda called out. The room quieted down. David and Sarah stood beside her, beaming. "I just want to make a toast to my beautiful daughter, Sarah, and my son-in-law, David," Brenda announced. "Look at this wonderful home they've created. They work so hard in the corporate world to afford a lifestyle like this." The guests murmured in agreement. Then, Brenda turned her gaze directly to me. Her smile dripped with poison. "And it's just so generous of them to let David's mother, Carolyn, stay here. I mean, let's be honest. At a family party, we can speak freely. No degree, no future, just a worthless old woman relying on her successful kids. We should all applaud Sarah for taking on such a burden." Sarah actually giggled. David looked down at his shoes, completely silent. A few guests chuckled awkwardly, while others exchanged uncomfortable glances. The room went completely silent, waiting for my reaction. They expected me to lower my head in shame, to cry, or to run away to my room. I didn't flinch. I didn't frown. I took a slow sip of my sparkling water, set the glass down on the mantel, and smiled. I walked to the center of the room. My heels clicked against the hardwood floor. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. True power doesn't have to shout. "Brenda," I started, my tone perfectly even. "You have no idea who I am." I looked around the room, making eye contact with the guests. "Since we are speaking freely, let me clarify a few things. You are right. I do not have a college degree. When I was 20, my late husband and I started a contracting business with nothing but a borrowed truck and a lot of grit. We built it into a highly profitable company. I managed the finances, the payroll, and the investments for 40 years. I turned my attention to Sarah, whose smile was rapidly fading. I am not a burden relying on my successful kids. In fact, it is quite the opposite. David and Sarah do not own this home. They do not pay a mortgage. Until last week, I was paying their water bill, their electric bill, and buying the food they ate. The guests began whispering. Brenda's face turned bright red. I am the woman who owns the roof over your head. I am the woman who funded this house, I stated clearly. Or rather, I was. David finally looked up, panic flashing in his eyes. Mom, what do you mean? I reached into my handbag and pulled out a single sheet of paper, the final sale agreement. I didn't wave it around. I just held it. I sold this house on Tuesday, I announced. The silence in the room was so deep you could hear the hum of the refrigerator. I handed the paper to David. His hands shook as he read it. The new owners get the keys in exactly 30 days, I explained, my voice completely devoid of emotion. They are a lovely couple. They expect the property to be completely empty. I suggest you and Sarah start packing tonight. You can't do this, Sarah shrieked, her carefully crafted corporate facade crumbling instantly. Where are we supposed to go? You didn't even give us notice. I just gave you 30 days, I replied. That is plenty of time for two successful, highly educated adults to find an apartment. Brenda stepped forward, sputtering. This is illegal. They have rights. You can't just throw them out on the street. It is my property. Brenda, the sale is final. The cash is in my account, and the closing date is set. There are no legal traps here, just the simple reality of ownership. I looked at David, who was holding his head in his hands. I let you live here to save money, I told him. Instead, you let your wife and her mother treat me like an unpaid servant in my own home. I am done providing. I didn't wait for them to argue. I didn't wait for apologies that I knew would only be fake anyway. I picked up my coat, walked out the front door, and drove to a nice hotel I had booked for the week. My phone started ringing before I even pulled out of the driveway. I turned it on silent and drove away, feeling lighter than I had in years. Here is the rewritten Chapter 10 expanded with new details, a deeper lesson, and a strong CTA. Perfectly matching Carolyn's calm and boundary-setting personality. I spent the next month finalizing my move, entirely from the comfort of my hotel. I hired professional movers to clear out my locked bedroom and the storage unit while David and Sarah were at work. I had zero interest in supervising their chaotic packing or dealing with their misplaced anger. David and Sarah were forced to scramble. Without my financial cushion, they couldn't afford a house, let alone the luxury lifestyle they had grown accustomed to. 2 weeks before the handover, Brenda actually had the audacity to call my cell phone, not to apologize, of course, but to demand I pay their security deposit. They are family, Brenda lectured, though her voice lacked its usual smugness. You sold the house from under them. You owe them a soft landing. I actually laughed. Brenda, you stood in my living room and loudly praised Sarah's corporate success while mocking my lack of a degree. Surely, highly educated. Successful women like you and Sarah can figure out a simple apartment deposit without a worthless old woman footing the bill. My wallet is permanently closed. I hung up and blocked her number right then and there. It felt fantastic. They ended up renting a cramped, overpriced two-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. The day before I left the state, David came to my hotel alone. He looked exhausted, the reality of his choices finally catching up to him. He actually asked me for a small loan to cover their moving truck. I didn't yell. I didn't scold him. I just reached into my bag and handed him a budget planner I had bought at the bookstore. You make a good salary, David. It's time you learn how to manage it. I told him gently but firmly. I love you, but I am no longer your safety net. You let your wife erase me from my own home. And you stood by in silence while her mother insulted me. This is the consequence. He looked down at the budget planner, his shoulders sagging. I'm so sorry, Mom. I really am. I know you are, I replied. But an apology doesn't change the past, and it doesn't reopen my checkbook. Goodbye, David. The following week, I moved to a beautiful, sunny condo near the beach in Texas, just 20 minutes away from my daughter, Lily. I spend my mornings walking on the sand, volunteering at a local library, and enjoying the absolute peace of a life with clear, unbreakable boundaries. I don't feel guilty. I feel free. Here is the most important lesson I learned through all of this. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of boundaries. You do not have to argue with people who disrespect you. You don't have to convince them of your worth, lower your standards, or wait for them to change. You just have to quietly and firmly remove their access to you and your resources. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away and build a beautiful life without them. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. If you've ever had to set a hard boundary with entitled family members, drop a comment below and tell me how you handled it. Did you find peace? Or was it a difficult transition? I read every single comment, and your stories mean the world to me. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with anyone who might need a reminder of their own strength. Until next time, remember your worth is defined by you, not by how others treat you. Stay strong and protect your peace.